Hello, welcome to Spread Book Joy. Today I've got a reading ramble where I'm going to update you on my recent reads, my reading evolution, and all sorts of things. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack. If you're not new, welcome back, and go and grab yourself a suitable cup of tea or a beverage of your choice. This is a huge cup that I got in Belgium in one of the best hot chocolate places I've ever been to in my life. I've been there twice. I'm going to put the name of the place up there, but they do these like massive cups of hot chocolate and you can buy the cups as well. So this is one of my most precious things. Usually I have hot chocolate in it, but today it is herbal tea. But yes, so grab yourself a cup of tea and let's get into this. So I'm going to update you on what I've been reading since our last reading ramble. I've read about 8 books, which one of which I was reading at the time of the last reading ramble, and I've been off work. Well, I'll say off work. I've been sort of part-time because schools have been closed for 2 weeks for the holidays. So I've been doing my online tutoring role, but nothing else really apart from that. And it's been so pleasant. I really needed a break because life was a bit full on. And I've decided to take advantage of the time off to do some filming, to pick up some books from the library, which I'm going to talk to you about in a bit as well. And just to enjoy having a bit more of a slower pace of life. So yeah, since we last spoke, I've read about 8 books, which sounds like a lot, I suppose, but I went through a period of a bit of time where I didn't have any group reads, buddy reads, etc. going on. I could pick whatever I liked to read, and much like my friend Sandy over at Miss Readathon mentioned recently in one of her videos, I really struggled to just mood read, to just pick up any book that I fancied, which is how I've read for most of my life. I've never been someone who's like got a TBR or a list of reading books they want to read. I've always been a mood reader. Like I've always just followed my nose and just read what I felt like. And when I had that bit of downtime, which I've been desperate for in terms of like having time away from lots of reading commitments, I didn't know what to do with myself. I found it really hard to choose a book. And I've been contemplating why. And I think it's because, you know, I created this tag video, The Evolution of a Reader, which has done quite well on BookTube. I'll link my original one in the description box below if you want to check it out, where I talked about my journey to becoming the reader I am today and how I've evolved and how my reading habits have changed. And it hadn't occurred to me, but I always kind of say, oh, I'm a mood reader. Well, I'm not really anymore, am I? I am kind of a mood reader, in that I don't ever set or stick to a TBR, but I do have some planned reading and I do take part in events, which means that I have some structure. So I'm kind of like a semi-structured reader now. So yeah, I have these elements of being a mood reader where I won't force myself to read anything if I don't really want to, and I won't make these big lists that I stick to because that just makes me miserable. But on the other hand, I've got all these amazing events that are coming up in BookTube, which I'll talk about a few of those in a moment as well, which I always want to take part in, I always want to support, and they always make me think about reading books that I may not have picked up before. So they're kind of enriching my reading life in millions of ways. So yeah, I kind of accepted that I do have some sort of structure. And if you look at the books I'm about to discuss with you, the books that I ended up picking up because in this period where I've had a bit of more of a free time to read, they are books because of readathons, because of release dates and wanting to review them. I'll talk about them all in a bit, but they're all books that, yeah, I kind of was swayed to pick because of what's going on BookTube, or because I wanted to review them for the author or whatever. So it's interesting to sit and reflect on that and just to be acceptant of it. So when I was sort of like, right, I've got all these books to choose from, and I just got decision paralysis, and I kept thinking about books that I've wanted to read for various readathons that I didn't get to, and all sorts of things like that. And initially, much like Sandy, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of broken. But then I was like, no, you're just a different type of reader now. So yeah, it's kind of my update of my evolution as a reader. Does anyone else have that since they've been on BookTube? Sometimes you don't have time to stop and think about it because you're so busy with all the readathons and all the things you're doing. But has anyone else noticed how much of a massive impact and change it's had on your reading habits? Anyway, so yeah, I'm going to stop talking about that now and tell you about the books that I read. I finished A Rover's Story by Jasmine Waga, which was the group read for middle grade March, which was delightful. And I had this huge pile of possibilities for middle grade March. And did I read any more? No, I didn't. March, as it turned out, ended up being such a super busy month for me that I could just about cope with the buddy read book that I had and maybe having another one along the side. And a lot of my middle grade books I have as physical books, and I didn't have time to sit and physically read, so I didn't do any other middle grade March reads, which is really disappointing for me. But I have got some still sitting here in my pile of possibilities pile that I have over here that's like books I want to access quickly. Jasmine Warga, A Rover's Story. I really enjoyed this. It wasn't amazing, but I thought it was an enjoyable read. It's billed as kind of the one and only Ivan meets the wild robot. The Rover's story, the Rover is, he's called Resilience, and he's the Mars rover being built in a lab. And we're flashing between his story and the story of the daughter of one of the scientists or engineers that's building Res, as he's short for Resilience, he's called Res, and the daughter is writing to him. She's kind of using it as almost like a diary and talking about her feelings. And so the Mars rover Res is sort of discovering the world and thinking about humans and discovering about life and the earth, and he's sent off to Mars. And all this time, this happens over a period of years, we are reading these almost like diary entries really, but they're these letters from Sophia to Res, and she's writing about her worries about life, about her mother, about everything that's going on in the world, her worries about him. And the relationship with her mother is almost taken secondary to the mother's relationship with him as the Mars rover that she's building and put her life's work into. So yeah, it was a really sweet book. It wasn't one of my sort of middle grades that blow me away, but I really enjoyed it. And Jasmine Warga has written a book that I actually had saved on Scribd some time ago, which is about Assyrian refugees' experiences going to America, and that looks really lovely. So I do think I will seek out another book by this author. I started buddy reading Daevabad Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty, which is, the first book is City of Brass and the second book is The Kingdom of Copper, and I buddy read both of those with Dia from Novel Idea, and we are now buddy reading the final book in the series Empire of Gold. And when I have finished the series, I will do a video on the series because it is a phenomenal fantasy series. When we finished buddy reading Tigana, which I didn't finish because I just couldn't bring myself to finish it, we wanted to kind of cleanse our palette with a fantasy book or series that was more written by a more modern author and perhaps a more diverse author, and we have been absolutely swept away in this entire universe world of S.A. Chakraborty, who has created just a stunning trilogy of books so far. My heart has been breaking. I have not been able to put them down. I have been entertained. I have been just absolutely swept away in this world. And yeah, I'm going to do a video on each of them. But the Daevabad Trilogy in a nutshell is fantasy series set in North Africa initially, in the 1800s in Egypt. We start off in Cairo, following a character called Nari, who is a con woman, and she's been homeless. She was found in the Nile River and dragged out of there when she was 5, and she's been living by her wits in Cairo ever since. And she discovers this entire secret world of magic and another world of magic and things that runs sort of parallel to this 18th century Egypt. And it's heavily based on Islamic folklore and mythology, and it's just absolutely amazing. I really, really love this series, and if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy like anything like Brandon Sanderson, if you like anything like Robin Hobb, you'll love S.A. Chakraborty's Daevabad Trilogy. It's just phenomenal, really good. And Dia and I have been having the best conversations about it, so yeah, highly recommended. Then of course I read Katie Lumsden's The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. I can't promote this book enough, absolutely loved this. I've got a whole video on the review, and when I went to the book launch for this and met loads of my lovely booktuber friends, which if you haven't watched it yet, I will link that in the description box or up here on a card. But yeah, The Secrets of Hartwood Hall, historical, Victorian, gothic, atmospheric mystery by BookTube's own Katie Lumsden, who has her channel here, Books and Things, over on BookTube, and it's just brilliant. I really, really enjoyed this. If you like Sarah Waters, if you like Daphne du Maurier, if you like the Brontes, if you like any Victorian literature, then you should try The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. It's very, very good. So of course I bought some books when we went to Katie's book launch, aside from The Secrets of Hartwood Hall. This was one of them, and I have finished it. It was The Cats We Meet Along the Way by Nadia Mikhail, and this was shortlisted for the Waterstones Children's Book of the Year. It's one of the finalists, or one of the ones that was picked, and it's okay. It's a YA book. I think it was not a terrible book. It's not a brilliant book. It's just an okay book as far as I'm concerned. It's set in Malaysia, and the world is ending, and Aisha and her mother are estranged from her older sister, and they go in a van with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's parents, who are gorgeous and lovely characters, by the way, and they go to find her sister June, who she hasn't seen in about 3 years, and they take a stray cat which they've named Fleabag along with them. Now the premise being that it's the end of the world and it's a trip and there's cats. I wanted more end of the world and I wanted more cats. So there's probably me thinking the book's just okay. Other people might really, really love it. I can see why people do love it, but for me, it didn't really deliver on the promises of it. It's more of a book about grief and relationships and realising that telling people what you feel about them before it's too late and that kind of thing. And there's a lot of exploration of grief, because Aisha and her mother are grieving for her Aisha's father, for Aisha's grandparents, and June has left the family 3 years ago, so they're kind of grieving for her, but also all this time they've lost and wasted not looking for her or not having a relationship with her, and now the world has less than a year left before the world's about to end. So yeah, it wasn't quite what I wanted it to be, but it wasn't a bad book. It wasn't an amazing book. It just wasn't what I wanted it to be. But yeah, I think a lot of people would enjoy this. I loved the relationship between Aisha and her boyfriend. I think he's like boyfriend goals, their relationship goals right there. That was really very sweet. And his parents are amazing as well. And Malaysia, it's a first book I've read set in Malaysia, I have to say, which is terrible, but yeah, the author is Malaysian and she wrote this as a debut novel. The next book that I bought and read was this, and it's Welcome to St. Hell, My Trans Teen Misadventure by Lewis Hancock. I loved this. I loved it so much, and I'm going to do a video on it. So I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but it's Lewis Hancock's graphic memoir of his time growing up trans, and he does it in a way where he talks to his younger self, who doesn't yet realise that he's a boy, so goes through all these different phases of trying to find his identity, and at the time had no idea when he was Lois that he was a boy, but he knew he wasn't happy being a girl, and just all the trials and tribulations. And I'm going to do a proper review on it. I don't want to talk about it too much here because I want to talk about it in depth in a video. I read this as part of this is one of my Trans Girl April TBR picks. And yeah, I loved it. And yesterday I finally finished Taste by Stanley Tucci. What can I say about this? I think I need to do an individual review on this as well, but Taste is a memoir of his life through food, as it says, and he writes so brilliantly about food. He has a clear passion for everything food related, the preparation, the history, the taste. Like, reading this book, you will be hungry. And I just love Stanley Tucci. He's just a really funny and wonderful person, and I really enjoyed reading his life through food. It's about 20 chapters, and each chapter has sort of a different focus, and it's kind of chronological. And it starts off with his memories of his childhood in Westchester in New York, and his Italian American parents, and his Italian grandparents who had immigrated to America and what they brought with them, and then his whole sort of backstory and rich enrichment of his life through food and his relationships, and how they bring his relationships and make his life immeasurably better because of the food that he shared with people, and the strengthening of his relationships and his bonds with people through food. It was lovely. If you like food memoirs, this is a fantastic one. He also has recipes scattered throughout, some of which I will definitely be making, and I loved his show where he talks about he toured Italy, and he went to find out about different regions and what they produce, and there's some of that in here, but this is far more than that. This is more of his life story, and his battle with cancer as well at the end, which was the last chapter. And whilst it was really stark what happened to him and almost completely ruined his relationship with food, it was really hopeful at the end as well, and made me really appreciative of all of the things that I take for granted when it comes to eating food and the pleasure I take in food. So yeah, I love this book, really, really recommend it. And he reads the audiobook as well, so what more could you ask for? Listen to the audiobook if you like Stanley Tucci, his voice is great. And yesterday I also finished a book that's been on my TBR for absolutely ages, and that is Melissa by Alex Gino, which was previously published as George. And Melissa is one of the very first ever middle grade books featuring a trans character by a trans author, and it was published in 2015. I've been meaning to read it for a long time, and I'm glad I did read it. I think it's a really, really important book, and one that I will be doing a review of because I think it deserves its own video. Alex Gino had called the book Girl George because it was a play on words for the musician Boy George from the 80s, and the publishers dropped the girl part because they didn't think kids would get the pun, which of course they wouldn't. Why would they? Like middle grade, like children who are reading middle grade now wouldn't get that. So they then called it George, but then of course it would be seen to be using a name that this character doesn't even want to use. So they renamed the book Melissa because that is how she sees herself in the book. And yeah, I think it's a really valuable book and a really important one. And if you want to learn about trans issues from a trans perspective, but in a gentle way, I think it's a really good book for anyone of any age to read. And yeah, things have moved on rapidly even since it was published in 2015. So there's a really good FAQ or Q&A or whatever you call it at the end with Alex Gino, and I listened to the audiobook on Scribd, and Alex Gino talks about how quickly things have moved forward and the different language and terms that change quite rapidly that make people a bit daunted about having conversations about trans lives and trans issues and things like that. And it's the Q&A at the end I think is really good as well, really eye-opening. But yeah, really good book. And that was for Trans Girl April as well. So that's what I've been reading, and that's what my rambling thoughts about my evolution as a reader, how that's changed. Some lovely readathons coming up in May as well, which are Montgomery May, which is being run by Scott over at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, along with my lovely friend Gemma, and they're reading Thomas Hardy, and the group read is Jude the Obscure, which I think will stamp on my heart. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to read Jude the Obscure, that's the plan. And then the other readathon is my lovely friend Emily is running a readathon all about hidden disabilities, and it's the Spoonies Readathon, and Spoonies is a term that people with hidden disabilities use to refer to themselves. So that's something I learned. Like, even just know, this is the thing about these readathons, I love the awareness that they raise of issues and people's lives, and just educating people. So yeah, that's one other readathon. And then my lovely friend Dia, who I've been buddy reading with, is one of the hosts of Montgomery May. Is it Montgomery May? Anyway, it's a readathon devoted to LM Montgomery, and I will leave all of their announcement videos in the description box. I took part in in one of the recommendation videos for Montgomery May as well, telling about my miserable books. And of course I'm running my own readathon, Picture This, which I have got a pile of books to get through for that. And yeah, there'll be more content around Picture This coming this way. I didn't want to include any Picture This stuff in the reading ramble, it would just get too long. But yeah, so many readathons, and this is why I think it's difficult for me to just completely mood read now, because I'd be sitting there wondering, what are my friends reading? What are my friends reading? Why am I not taking part? The FOMO is going to get you, and it's not just the FOMO, not fear of missing out, but missing your friends and missing what they're reading and missing what they're up to. And I think that's the issue that I had. Like, I don't feel like I can just be this reader in isolation anymore. Like, I'm just not that anymore. So anyway, if you're interested in any of those, I'll put all the details in the description box, and hopefully I will see you again here soon. Bye!